This is the one that nearly ruled them all. But why is nobody talking about it? Trivia challenge, answer quickly. How many remote guests can you record in multitrack with the Vocaster Pro with the original version? Let me help you. 3. With the Tascam Mixcast 4? 3. With the new Vocaster Pro 2? 3. That is at least until you have installed firmware 1.0.7. More on that later. Why did I ask? Because this is the league the Focusrite Vocaster Two plays in.
Wow.
The Vocaster 2 does a lot of things right when it comes to podcast recording. It also does a lot of things wrong, but it excels in one area in particular, and that is recording remote guests. Just like the aforementioned heavyweight consoles, literally, it also can record 3 remote guests simultaneously in multitrack. Only it costs half of them, $300 in July 2022. Having said that, I got really excited when I first saw the specs, and I wanted to tell you that this thing just roasts all other podcasting consoles on the market. It doesn't at the end, but it's this close, and Focusrite can actually do something about it. And it's because it could have easily been the only podcasting interface in the world that can record 4 remote guests simultaneously, natively, in multitrack, if Focusrite had made it available in the underlying operating system. They didn't, but still, they stack up really well against that pretty noble company of podcasting consoles for a $300 interface. A quick update, by now the Vocaster Pro 2 has caught up and actually went ahead, allowing you to record 4 remote guests with firmware 1.0.7 with the custom routing feature. Still, it is an interesting device really. As I said, it does a lot of things right, but most of them, well, could be just a little bit better. For example, it has 70 decibels of clean gain, solid preamps that we are accustomed to from Focusrite. But it has no gain scale whatsoever, neither on the device nor in the software. Ah yes, it has a well-built, easy-to-use software, but you don't have a recorder in the software like with the Rode Connect or the Tascam Podcast Editor. And speaking of recording, it does not have an SD card for internal recording. It does require a computer or mobile device to work with the software installed that is capable of multitrack recording, unlike the Zoom P4, which I would say is its main competitor, even it was released 2 years ago, also with 70 decibels of gain, by the way. And you can actually use the Vocaster with the Tascam Podcast Editor, which is also available for iOS, so let's say it's fine. To compensate for the lack of native recording capability, Focusrite actually gives you a very capable podcast recording software, one of the best, I should say, which is Hindenburg. However, Hindenburg only allows multitrack recording in its Pro version, which you only get for 6 months. After that, you only have the Hindenburg Lite, which is a single-track recorder, and the upgrade to Hindenburg Pro carries a hefty $300 price tag. It also has DSP, so voice processing built in, but you are not able to adjust them. You get 4 presets, and that's it. They are fine. You can find the actual settings behind them on Focusrite's website, link in the description, but not that fine if you consider what you get from the PreSonus Revelator for half the price. Okay, that's not a remote guest recording champion like the Vocaster. But let's get to the positives. First, I had to realize that when assessing its features and listing all these shortcomings, I actually had to pick a different competitor for each point. PreSonus is better in 1 point, Zoom is in another, Tascam in the 3rd, Rode in the 4th, and so forth. Which means that if you take a step back, that is actually a pretty comprehensive package that gives you some of the best features of these guys, even if a little bit stripped down at times. One of the best features, and one which I enjoyed using a lot, is auto gain. They weren't the first to have it, the Behringer Flow 8 and the Audient Evo series has it, but they are hardly dedicated podcast recorders. It is a joy to use, especially in conjunction with the enormous gain range. So you just press the auto gain button, talk to the microphone normally as you would for about 10 seconds, and it sets the gain properly for you. The Vocaster 2 has, surprise I know, 2 mic inputs, unfortunately not combo inputs, so you can't plug in a line input, let alone a guitar, but then neither the Zoom PodTrack P4 nor the original Vocaster Pro had it. It can supply 48 volts of phantom power to each mic separately, also a very welcomed addition versus all the Scarlett interfaces. It's also great that, just like with the new Rodecaster Pro 2, you can actually access every basic feature right on the device. You don't need the software, as long as you don't record remote guests, for which you have the show mixer in the Vocaster app. The device has no controls for any other channel than the 2 mic inputs and the 2 headphone ports, but it does have a button for muting the channels, for auto gain, and for the presets, as well as to switch on 48 volts phantom power for each channel. And it would actually be a pity if you wouldn't want to record remote guests, as that's what I started with. This thing is a remote guest recording champ. First, it has a TRRS port to connect the mobile device with the Mix Minus setup automatically, and this is the port that the new Rodecaster Pro 2 actually lacks. This is coming in on the aux channel in the mixer. It also has a Bluetooth channel, which is so dearly missed from the Zoom PodTrack series and from the Rode Connect software. You can record a second remote guest from another mobile device onto a separate track, also with Mix Minus. Then it has the software loopback channels. Yes, plural, as it has 2 of them. And this was the near miss in the design process. Even though you have 2 separate loopback channels, you only can use one of them for a Mix Minus situation, so in online calls. When you plug it into your computer, it only shows you Vocaster 2 USB as the available option for audio input and output. You would select it as a mic input in Teams or Zoom or other online communication apps, and as these apps by default would use channel 1 and 2 for sound, this will have a Mix Minus on, so it does not feed the caller's voice back into the call. Theoretically, you could use the Loopback 2 channel to play in background music or sound pads from another software, as the Vocaster software does not have sound pads either, as opposed to Rode Connect. But the setup is pretty weird, as Loopback 2 channel only receives sound from applications that use channels 3 and 4 for sound output. Quite confusing, right? It's rather cumbersome to set up unless your DAW digital audio workstation lets you specifically define its output channels. So I ended up not even trying any harder. How cool would it have been if Focusrite would just added 2 USB channels to appear right upon when you plug it in, for instance Vocaster 2 primary and Vocaster 2 secondary, and allow you to choose whether or not you would want to have Mix Minus on both loopbacks, just with a switch in the software. And then we could have said it is the world's best remote guest recording console with the ability to record 4 remote guests in multitrack, which now only one of its competitors can do, the Rodecaster Pro 2, which frankly is not a real competitor as it costs more than double the price of the Vocaster 2. And as for my overall opinion on the Vocaster range and the Vocaster 2 specifically, I'll tell you if you hit the like and subscribe. Just kidding, I'll tell you anyway that I am biased on these near misses. As they say in soccer terms, or as Focusrite is a British company in football terms, if you hit the post, it's just as much of a missed shot as if you would have kicked the ball out of the stadium. It's just a bit closer. Nonetheless, for the price, I would actually recommend the Vocaster 2 if you don't mind that you need a computer to operate it. The lack of gain level scales is offset by the excellent auto gain feature. It is fun to use and has the deservedly praised Focusrite quality with the huge gain range on top. Podcasters would have a lot of fun recording their shows with it, and you can add the soundpad effects in post if needed. Not applicable for live streams, of course, but at least you have the second loopback, if you can make it work, that is. Also, it has a dedicated 3.5mm line output for feeding the audio directly from the Vocaster 2 into your camera, which is ingenious. I would actually not recommend buying the Vocaster 1 though, as it lacks the Bluetooth option and it only has a single mic input. It still has all the other great features like auto gain, but for its price, the Zoom PodTrack P4 is a much better choice for podcast recording, even if it does not have the auto gain feature. Focusrite would easily be able to make this product from a great but could be better to a really awesome one with 5 software enhancements, namely add scales to the meters, add the second USB channel natively to feed Loopback 2, enable Mix Minus for both Loopback channels, add sound pads to the Vocaster hub, give access to fine-tuning the voice processing presets, at least with a simple slider to adjust how much of a certain processing I want to apply. With these 5 software enhancements, the Vocaster 2 would be the undisputed king amongst podcasting interfaces in the up to $300 range, even hitting way above its class with the option to record the fourth remote guest. If Focusrite could hit a deal with Hindenburg and either give you the pro version for a lifetime or at least with a generous discount, that would even make the Vocaster 1 recommendable. And until then, solid quality device which is fun to use and still the only one that can record up to 3 remote guests in its price class. Come on, Focusrite. It's just the software and some negotiations. Make it work. Make it the best podcast interface below €300. Bye for now.